Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzalez, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
You can lead a toddler to the potty, but you can't make him pee? Ain't that the truth?
Even if it's what's best for them, even if they're squirming, and on some level they know that they would get relief from just letting it out.
Oh my God, right? You know, you can sit them there and you can try to make them sit there until they go while they're screaming in your face.
Right? You can hold them down, you can force them, you can have...
But it's not going to happen.
No way. Nope.
You know, I think that's why potty training for us was so successful. Because we just weren't really attached to the outcome. And, you know, He was allowed to show up and make it happen.
And it was more like, okay, we're going to go sit on the potty. Sitting was the successful thing.
That's it.
It wasn't about, let's go pee, let's go poop. It was just, we're going to go sit on the potty. So first we sit on the potty, then we watch a show, or then we go and play outside, or whatever that is. But we used that cadence.
Yeah, I think we did an episode about potty training.
Yeah, we did.
That was a fun one. Check out the show notes for that. You can go to babiesinbiz.com/92. See all the stuff we talk about during this episode. But we're laughing about this because it's a conversation in leadership and influence. You know, influence versus forcing.
Yeah.
There's a really great book by David Hawkins. It's pretty dense, but it's good if you're into this kind of stuff. It's called Power versus Force. You know, and so it's kind of like influence versus force. What is going to draw somebody in versus push them in and make them do it?
Yeah. Well, I just think about the leaders in my life where I've had people that you follow because you're afraid of the consequences, if you don't, or you follow because you really want to see where they're going and where you're going to get to by following them.
Yeah.
You just really know that they're going to take you to a great place. And you follow them because of their charisma and their kindness and their relatability and their vision. There's so many reasons why you'd follow that leader as opposed to following someone out of fear of consequences if you don't.
There's another great book by John Maxwell that you're already touching on.
Yeah.
It's called The 5 Levels of Leadership. And that leader that you're following because you better do what they say is that level 1 type leader where they're leading from an authority position.
Yeah. I'm
the boss.
The boss. I'm your dad. You do it because I say so, you know.
I mean, it's like how many Game of Thrones type shows do you have to watch where you've got the villain who is this level 1 leader who is screwing everybody. You know, but what happens? They eventually rise up and they take them down.
Yeah. Everybody around them is like, we're going to take you down and it's going to be a massive fall.
And you cheer when they're slaughtered.
Oh,
right?
That's terrible and true.
Level 1 leaders breed resentment in the people that they are. I mean, we're saying leading, kind of loosely from this level, but...
well, I think they inspire people to rise up against them because that's the only way that they can move forward. And it's like a tyrant, you know. It is a tyrant. Somebody that just, it's my way or the highway.
Mm-hmm. You know, and we're not going to go into each of the individual levels, but I'll give you a brief synopsis of it. You know, a level 2, level 3 leader, those are the people that they're interested in what their followers, we'll just use the word followers, even though it's a weird phrase, I think, sometimes.
Yeah.
They're interested in what their followers want and need.
Yeah.
And they're looking at how they can get them what they want while moving the organization forward.
Sure.
Right? And so they
still have that goal, but they're also taking the people that they have under their leadership with them more willingly than number 1.
Yeah, and having so much consideration for what's important to them and what drives them. So they're tapping into that and they're building those personal connections so that when they ask, hey, could I get your help doing this thing?
Yeah.
The people that they're leading say, well, of course, right? We are eager to serve.
Yeah.
And do the thing. You get to level 4, level 5 leadership. I believe level 5 leadership is leaders that are building other leaders.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's a pretty incredible and powerful place to be because you start getting into legacy. When you build other people up to be the greatest version of themselves and to lead others, that's like the highest calling for humanity.
Yeah.
I think it's the thing that makes us the most human is our ability to connect and impact on a level like that. You cannot be a level 5 leader by pressing your thumb down on folks. Why would they ever want to follow you if you were like that? No, it's about lifting others up. And I wouldn't say putting others before you, but it is about putting their consideration, putting their dreams and their desires as important.
Yeah.
And part of the bigger vision.
Yeah. And really helping people see their potential. You know, some people don't see themselves or they wouldn't maybe vocalize themselves as a leader, but when you help people see their potential, then they do rise up and become that best and greater version of themselves.
Yeah. So when we think about like the toddler with the potty, it's funny, right? Because you're putting them on the potty or you're saying, hey, we need to go. Like I can see that you are, and sometimes like you can tell they're in pain from holding the pee.
Or with Lincoln recently, it's been really, I say funny lightly, because sometimes it's very frustrating, but it is funny at the same time. And that is, you know, he's woken up from a nap, we'll say, and he's just squirming. Also, he's not interested in the normal things that he would be interested in. He's very angry about everything. He's very emotional about everything. And my thought is, okay, there's something way bigger at play. I think you need to go potty, and all of these frustrations and just this buildup of pressure would go away.
Yeah.
And the moment we go potty, oh yeah, all done.
Yeah.
So we can see things, see the needs of others, but how do we get them to act on that for themselves?
Yeah. So the answer to that question we did in another podcast with the potty, right? And we talked about it briefly, and it's like being open and not involving force in it.
Yeah.
When they go and they take care of themselves, there's this empowerment that happens and this pride in the achievement.
Right.
So it's really easy to see this in your toddler, but can you think of somebody in your life who you've seen clearly something that would really benefit them, or they've been complaining about something a lot and you're like, wow, I got this book for them, or I've got this other resource, or maybe I've got something for them and it's going to cost some money, but like it is exactly what they're asking for. And you offer it and they're like, no.
Absolutely.
They like dig in their heels.
Oh yeah.
Not open to it, not interested. So you can think of that person.
Absolutely.
Right? And my question to you who's listening, where are you that person in your life?
Yeah. Where are those invitations that you've rejected that could make you better? Or that someone else sees something that could really benefit you and you've chosen, no, that's not for me, or for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's like, psych, you thought this was about leadership. It's about receiving.
Right.
Okay. This whole podcast, because sometimes people are throwing you the life raft, but because it doesn't look like this, and this, you're like, no, I'll wait for the boat.
Or it's not the right timing, or I just think about something that recently happened for us in our life, and it was both frustrating and relieving at the same time. And, you know, we were having a conversation yesterday or the other day about the effect that this would have on us. And I just remember saying, well, but this is exactly what we've been asking for. And it may not be the perfect timing for us, and it may not feel convenient right now, and it may not feel like the answer that we were looking for, because maybe we had a vision of what it would look like, sound like, feel like, be like.
Yes.
And it doesn't actually fit those imaginations that we had.
Yes.
But being willing to receive those answers in a different form than we suspected they might come.
It's true. Whenever you ask for change, it doesn't always show up exactly like you thought it would.
From the source, it is going, I guarantee you it's going to look different. But if you really tap into what you've been asking for, you will see that it aligns. Where in your life do you have something that you've recently rejected or had a hard time with that maybe really aligns with where you want to go?
Yeah. Your subconscious mind is pretty powerful.
Oh, yeah.
You find yourself knee-jerking your way through life, and you start to realize, I am not consciously running the show.
Yeah.
There is a lot of stuff in the background that's running, and it's not actually me. And we have to consciously get out of the way.
Yep.
And be open. Something happens, we have to get out of what is right about this, what is wrong about this, and start looking at like, how could this serve me?
Correct. Yeah.
Is this the change that I've been asking for?
Yeah. Well, and I think also something to bring to that reflection is the willingness to be wrong. We function in life, and I especially because of how I grew up, and we're not even going to go into that, about how we feel about being wrong about something. Like, we have these knee-jerk reactions and these judgments, all these things, like you said, that are really programs or beliefs or whatever you want to call them, going on in the background, and we don't even know about it. And that is the source of which creates those knee-jerk reactions and those judgments and those just the different ways that we react. And if we're willing to be wrong about how we perceive the world and how we perceive this problem, all the things, I think we'll be surprised at what's possible when we are okay with being wrong.
Yeah. I know that you shared something about the early part of our relationship.
Yes.
So, we couldn't have come from different backgrounds. And we were together, and I would always just think, man, she's just really quiet. And, I'm like, I'm cool with that. But I'm like, is she going to open up?
Well, and I really had no opinions either.
Yeah. And so we would be going for walks, we'd be hanging out, and then she would just be like really quiet now and then. And I just thought, oh, that's cool. Like, we're just getting to know each other. What was actually going on for you?
Well, I had just come out of a very manipulative and physically abusive, emotionally abusive relationship for 8 years. And I was just really feeling all sorts of ways about how I grew up and all things, and going through divorce, and just my life had been shaken up. And when I met you, you were just so kind to me. And then when we got together and we were dating and you introduced me to your parents, and I mean, for the longest time I was waiting for the shoe to drop. Like, this guy can't be this great and this kind to me and this really be who he is and is not going to change. So what I would find is there were times when you would do things that were too nice for me to handle.
Interesting, yeah.
And you would do things that were too generous for me to handle, and too so much goodness that I really had a hard time. And what I realized early on, and you never suspected this, which is interesting, I realized that I had the opportunity to allow you to show up and give me everything that you were willing and able and already giving me in just how kind you were and supportive and all the things that were uncomfortable for me, and the way that I allowed you to do that while I was uncomfortable with receiving it is I had a mantra, and that was, I can receive this. So when you or your parents or any kind of situation would come up and it made me uncomfortable, where, you've seen movies where people push people away
Yes.
because they're judging that the person isn't genuine, or for all the reasons that they make up, that they can't actually receive the thing. They can actually push people away with their non-receiving. I recognized that I had that power, and I did not want to push you away because I knew that I wanted every second, every moment with you. When I realized who you were, it didn't take me long to know how amazing you were. And then it was my job to receive it. So I had that mantra, I can receive this. And it actually probably kept going for 2 years, for the first 2 years that we were together. And then it eventually waned off, but I do find myself still leaning on that sometimes because I am uncomfortable with how kind you are to me.
Isn't that sweet, folks? I love that story because of what it stands for, especially in this context.
Yeah.
Life is always wanting to give to you.
Yep.
And we are really good at shutting it down, pushing it out, and saying no. And the brain is great at coming up with all these reasons why. But deep down, you desire it, and you're asking for it, and it keeps showing up. And people think that receiving is like a passive thing, like it just happens.
Yeah.
But I hope that what Rachel's share demonstrates for you is that it is an active thing as well, because there are times when you have to lean into what is being shown because it is uncomfortable and it doesn't look like what you're used to.
Yeah.
Remember, change itself is not comfortable. And so just because something's uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's the wrong choice for you.
Absolutely not. Well, at this point in my life, my whole life had been thrown up in the air, and I got to catch the pieces and decide what I kept. And I remember very vividly thinking about some conversations growing up about, like, women that are abused by men get killed on the third time that they go back. You leave a man that abuses you, you leave, you go back. You leave, you go back, you leave, you go back, and you're dead. That's the cycle that I had heard and seen in movies and things. And I just remember being with my ex and thinking, I want to be with someone that treats me the way I treat people. And I found that in you. And I consciously chose to do the opposite of what I was inclined to do, to allow myself to be uncomfortable in receiving new and better things. And I was curious because I knew that if I always did what I'd always done, I would always get what I'd always gotten. My dad was mean and abusive and unkind, and my ex was mean and abusive and unkind, and I saw that pattern, and I said, no more for me. And it took conscious effort on my part to allow all of that goodness into my life. It was work on my part.
That's it, right? That's it.
Yep.
That's the nugget. That's the nugget. That's the point. That's where we were trying to get this whole time, is you have to open up and just let the good in.
Yep.
And when you try to keep the bad out, you also keep the good out.
Yeah. Exactly. You put up a wall, you keep everything out.
You keep everything out. So, like I shared, it is a leadership thing, right? Because you ultimately have to lead yourself before you can lead others.
Yeah.
But this is also a receiving thing.
Yeah.
So to lighten it up a little bit, have a fun little story for you while we close out. One of the two things you need to know about our almost 3-year-old son, Lincoln. As we're recording this, he turns 3 tomorrow. So it's pretty exciting. If you get to meet him or know him, at this time in his life, first thing you need to know is he will challenge you to a race. Everything will be a race. So everything will turn into a race track or a place that you can compete and race. He's going to count you down. He'll probably leave the starting line first. He'll cheat a little bit, get a head start on you, and it's always going to be a race. And he'll just urge you to do that over and over.
Let's race.
Let's race. Well, something also funny that you need to know is that if you don't say yes, the current tactic to get you to race with him is he'll say, Daddy, will you come race with me? Say yes.
Before you can even say anything.
Before you can get up, before you can say anything, I'll say yes. And it's cute, right? Because I think maybe, salesman in the making, right? Very convincing young fellow. Knows what he wants. We're going to work on teaching him the difference between manipulation and influence.
Yep.
Right? Like, bud, you can't force people to do the thing, right? But you can invite them to do the thing.
Yeah.
And so what I invite you to do is to continue to invite those around you into greater possibilities. Just because they say no to something doesn't mean that you should stop offering it.
Yeah.
A toddler will reject something that they like 10, 15, 20 times before they go, this is my favorite thing ever.
Yes.
As we grow older, it doesn't really change that much. And we have a lot of programming that tells us we should say no. And that's the knee-jerk reaction.
Right. And we need to question that.
We need to question that. So you don't have to force things with people because they're going to resent you. So that's not the right way.
Right.
But you can continue to invite them. Because doesn't it feel great to be invited to the party even if you can't go?
Absolutely. And sometimes you can invite without saying anything. An invitation is also just showing up genuinely. I have found that by me being willing to be seen and heard, that others are seeing it and hearing it. And they're hearing and feeling the call.
Man, powerful stuff. We appreciate you for listening to this episode. We mentioned a couple of other resources, podcasts, books, and things like that. If you go to babiesandbiz.com/92, that's this episode, you can go check out all those things that we mentioned, other podcasts and such. You can get engaged in the comments area. We've got that on there too. We read every comment. We respond to every email. If you have an idea for a topic that we could cover on the podcast, just send us an email at hello@babiesandbiz.com. We'd love to hear it. Feature your question on an upcoming episode. So thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.